Hi there. You don't know me, but my name is Jim Yao. I'm an RN and an ex-liberal, recovering Democrat, if you wish. Basically, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story in just a minute or so and let you know why I changed from being a liberal, a diehard liberal, to a conservative. In 1972, I saw a place in a post office where people almost rioted because their welfare checks were going to be a day late. They couldn't understand it, and they actually had to call the police department to come and quiet the people down and keep them calm. And I had this epiphany, like, what are we doing to people? And realized that there were 2 and 3 generations of people on welfare and government assistance and had no way to get off of it. So I started doing a lot of research, spent from 1972, believe it or not, to 1987. That's how hard a diehard liberal I was. I actually voted for Jimmy Carter twice. But in 1987, I officially switched from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party. And I had an epiphany that I want to share with you, and hopefully it'll make a little bit of sense to you. So I'm going to show you something here, that my epiphany, and hope you get something out of it. And I want to say one thing to you. Don't believe me. Do this. Question. See, I think it was Adolf Hitler once said, I'm not sure, but I think he said, isn't it wonderful for governments that people don't think? Well, I want you to be the politician's worst nightmare, a voter who thinks. And so what I want to do is I want to show you my epiphany and check it out for yourself, think about it and dwell on it, and hopefully you'll come to see what I did. Okay, remember that 2 question I asked you. How does a person get elected? They get the most votes. So let's play a game for just a minute, okay? Well, the game is this. You and I are in the same county, we're in the same congressional district, and it's election time. We're voting for our congressman. Who do we vote for? Well, let's just play the game and say that I'm a Republican and you're a Democrat. You got to get the most votes. How do you do that? Well, you have to energize your base, you have to get the excitement up, you have to make sure people get out and vote for you, but more importantly, you have to increase the number of people in your base. You have to broaden your base. And sometimes it's kind of hard to broaden your base and let you educate people and make sure they understand that your policies are designed to help them. Sometimes it's kind of hard to appeal to a guy making $70,000, $80,000 a year, working 40 hours a week, and somebody who doesn't have a job, living on a welfare check. So it's easier to increase the number of people in your base. Well, let's look at the bases. Popular opinion says this: who's the base of the Republican Party? Well, the rich. Everybody knows that the rich, Republicans are all rich, right? Now, also people who are what? Independent of government assistance. They don't want the government's help. Matter of fact, they say, please, just get out of my way. Let me succeed or fail on my own. Popular opinion says this: who's the base of the Democratic Party? Well, the poor. Everybody knows the Democrats are trying to help those poor people. And people who are what? Dependent upon government assistance. They don't think they can make it without the government check, the government handout. So, me as a Republican, who do I have to increase the number of people? I have to increase the number of people who are rich. I have to increase the number of people who are independent of the government. As a matter of fact, I have to increase the number of people who are saying, government, just please get out of my way. Let me succeed or fail on my own. If I fail, I'll try, learn, and adjust. I'll succeed. I'll do something. I'll re-educate myself, whatever. As a Democrat, who do you have to increase the number of people of? The people who are poor. Okay, you have to increase the number of people who are standing in line waiting for a welfare check, and you have to increase the number of people who literally do not believe they can make without government assistance. And you say, well, that's stupid. That's not right. That can't be right. Well, let's look at welfare. Okay, I don't know how old you are, but I was 12 years old when John Kennedy tried to start the welfare state, and he was assassinated. Lyndon Johnson took it over. The war on poverty started in 1964. Okay, and today we have more people living in poverty than any time in American history. Why? Well, for 60 years, the Democrats, 50 years actually, the Democrats ran things. Well, let's personalize a little bit. It's not my story necessarily. It might be yours. It might not be. But let's look at a 16-year-old guy. Okay, he quits high school at 16. They said, who needs this education crap? Okay, I'm going to go out and just do my thing. So quits high school at 16. It's 10 years later. He's 26. What's he been doing? He's been working at McDonald's for 10 years at minimum wage. And finally, he's got a wife, and he's got a little girl now, a little son, whatever it is. And he says, this is insane. I need to do something. I'm tired of living from paycheck to paycheck. I'm tired of, depending on somebody else. I want to better myself. So what does he do? He goes back and gets his GED. Okay? He gets his GED, and what does McDonald's do? They say, man, that shows initiative. How about making you an assistant manager? Okay? So after a year or so of this, he looks at the thing and says, I like this. It's better, more money. My family's eating a little bit better. I think I'll go get my associate degree. So he gets his associate degree. And after a year or so, McDonald's says, man, that's really exciting. Let's make you a manager. Okay, so there's more money. And he really likes this. So he says, man, I think I'll go back and get my 4-year degree. I think I'll become a registered nurse. I'll become an engineer. I'm going to do something. So all of a sudden, over here, he's making minimum wage, and who's he voting for? Democrats. Why? Because they're helping him out. Over here, he's making more money, and now all of a sudden he realizes that in one way or another, the government's taking 60, 70% of his income. And all of a sudden he says, whoa, wait a minute. I'm the one who went back to school. I'm the one who sacrificed night hours going to school and sacrificing time with my family to get a better education. And now all of a sudden the government's taking 60 to 70% of my money? Who's he going to vote for? Republicans. Why? Because they're going to let him keep a little bit more of his money. Okay? They helped, the policies that maybe they instituted helped him get off of the welfare rolls, and now he doesn't need government assistance, but they're still taking all of his money. Okay? Over here, who's he voting for? Democrats. Why? Because they were giving him a paycheck. But they were also keeping him down. And for 50 years, the Democrats kept control of the House and the Senate. Okay? You do for yourself, do this, study how Congress works, and you'll understand what I'm talking about. House of Representatives controls the purse strings, House of Representatives spends the money, House of Representatives is what writes the rules as far as how this stuff, Congress writes legislation on how money's spent. And for 50 years, Democrats said this. Democrats, let's call them liberals, said this. Oh, you're married? Forget that. No government assistance. Man's got to be gone. So what did that do? It destroyed families. It chased the man away. It replaced a father figure, a husband figure, with a government figure. Okay? And they said, man can't be involved. So they split families up. A lot of single mothers, they're out there. They said, oh, you want a car? Sorry, no government assistance. You have a job? Forget that. Can't work and have welfare at the same time. Okay? Oh, you own a house? You got to sell it, get rid of it, lose it, something. You cannot get help from us unless you're destitute. Okay? Now, have you ever heard the term work first? If you haven't, go look it up. Okay? If you have, you heard it first in 1994 when the Republicans got control of the House and Senate for the first time in 80 years. Okay? And what they said was this: welfare is destroying families. It's keeping people in poverty. We've got 3 and 4 generations now in poverty in the same family. We've got to end welfare as we know it, but you can't just cut it off because people don't have the education. They don't really have a job history. They don't know how to work and take care of themselves because they've been dependent on the government. So let's help them. Let's help them to go back to school. Let's help them get an education, own stuff, maybe buy a car, maybe even buy a house. Put a time limit on it. Make sure they understand we're serious about it. So let's say 2 years. But during that 2-year program, two-year period, we're actually going to help them become independent. So at the end of that 2-year period, yes, the welfare stops, but guess what? They don't need it anymore. Why? Because they're independent of government assistance. They can make it on their own. Now, what do the Democrats do? They kept people in poverty. See, I defy you. And think about this. I want you to really think about it for yourself. Name me one incentive there is for any Democrat to help anybody succeed. Because the moment they help you succeed and become independent of the government, there goes a vote for them. That vote just went where? Over to people who don't need they don't have that philosophy. Their philosophy is our compassion is measured by the number of people who don't need government assistance. Okay? And the liberals' so-called compassion is measured by how many people on the public dole stand in line with their hand out waiting for our help so they can vote for us. I defy you to show me any incentive, even one incentive there is for any Democrat to help anybody who is poor become independent. There isn't any. Do your homework. I think, as I said before, I think Adolf Hitler said it. I could be wrong, but I think Adolf Hitler said this. He said, isn't it wonderful for governments that people don't think? Think. Become your politician's worst nightmare, a voter who questions. Think about your family, think about your future, think about your children. Because right now we have children of children of children who have been on welfare for 40, 50 years. And they're no better off now than when the so-called liberals decided to provide their so-called help. It hasn't been help. It's been keeping people in poverty for 50 years.